I really wanted to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to read through some of the content, as well as going over everything for today. So as Jamie was saying, this is part of the first of the series. We are really keen to get feedback around who you want to listen to, who you want to learn from, and certainly we look forward to doing more of these series. So in relation to it's getting started today, I just want to do an acknowledgement of country. So in the spirit of reconciliation, Kangarootime acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connection to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to the elders past, present and emerging, and we extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. So just a quick thing about me, as Jamie was saying, for some of you that have joined in today, certainly I would be a familiar face from a bit of a blast from the past. I've got about 15 years experience working in the childcare sector with qualifications sort of sprinkled throughout that. My main life though has been behind the scenes in business admin. So this is where we have our CCS software. So I delivered and developed group training for all of Quick Kids around Australia for about 8 years of my life. Did the health checks and auditing, risk minimisation, and obviously contracted them for a long amount of time. I guess my real passion is around helping services that are struggling around legislation and subsidy. So that's really important for me to touch base with as many people as I possibly can. And I'm really thankful that Kangarootime has given us the opportunity to reach out to people that may be needing that extra support. In my spare time outside of CCS and All the Land, I'm really passionate about education. So we have myself and some good friends of mine, we build and support a early education preschool over in Kakuma in Kenya. And currently we have about 150 to 200 kids attending. We also, my big passion is to do projects or admin support and assistance for any services in regional and remote Australia as well, especially our friends that might be joining us from Indigenous communities or any sort of not-for-profit, smaller services that are in remote and regional places. So getting on with what we're going to cover in today's training, I really wanted to touch base on just a couple of things that I guess has been what is available to you. So if you're a service that some families are going through a lot of change and needing a bit of extra help, there is some different things available to the government, and that's your ACCS and the different types of ACCS that are available for you, your GapFree Absences, and also your increase in your absent counts. And also just a reminder on that, this information is correct and has been checked in the department DESE website today, but it's always subject to change. And as everyone knows, anything can change. So even this afternoon, it might be outdated, but at the moment, I'm hoping that what we're telling you is up to date. So this is been checked this morning. So first off, there's some support that's available for families that can lodge themselves in the MyGov portal. Now, these are important for you guys to know about, but certainly not essential for you to have any part in helping the family as a service, an admin, director or approved provider. You can't actually help out in the application process for this, but for the families, they do have access to ACCS Temporary Financial Hardship, ACCS Transition to Work, and ACCS Grandparent Support. And I just want to break those down a little bit. Obviously not as much as the child wellbeing and the PEA enrolments we're going to talk about, but just to really break into what is the temporary financial hardship for families. So just for families, if they are going through any sort of temporary financial hardship events, things like a death of a partner, unexpected loss of income, but it can't include things like resignation or retirement. So it has to be that it was unexpected. A loss of a business or failure due to outside circumstances, major disasters, things like natural disasters, as well as obviously any sort of severe damage to the family's home or their workplace, and any family that may be affected by sort of domestic violence or family violence. Now, there is other options for temporary financial hardship. So I'd always ask you to get the family to have a look through the information that's available through their MyGov app. But certainly there's some of the main key things that would allow a family to put through a claim for temporary financial hardship. What wouldn't be used as temporary financial hardship? So you might find families get rejected if they are a family that maybe is a low income family or in a low socioeconomic bracket, and they haven't had any changes to their income or circumstances. They just can't afford to pay fees. So bad debtors, things like that. If we don't have families that are changing in their circumstances, 9 times out of 10, you'll find that Centrelink or ACCS, temporary financial hardship, will be rejected at that point in the MyGov system. So as I said, families need to just apply themselves. If they do get approved, it will be for up to 13 weeks per event. They can get 100% of their fees covered, up to 120% of the hourly rate. What that actually means for services, if you charge over the hourly rate, there may be a small out-of-pocket the parent still needs to pay on temporary financial hardship. And during the time the family is getting temporary financial hardship, they won't have to meet any activity tests. So they'll get 100 hours of support, which is great. So moving on from there in relation to the next one, which is transition to work. Again, this is something that you guys don't need to apply yourself, and families might meet the eligibility for this. So they need to be eligible for childcare subsidy, have an income of under 70,000 as of the 2021-2022 taxable year. They need to be receiving some sort of income support payment, and they need to be engaged in and recognised in an improved work, study or training activity. So based on what they're doing, whether it's a family that's going off some sort of income support to getting their first job, it might be that they're doing a study, full-time study, they will get a certain amount of subsidised care under the transition to work. The great thing for these families is they will actually get up 95% of their fee charged, where it's equal to the hourly rate. Again, if your service charges over the hourly rate, it will be 95% of the hourly rate cap. So there will be, again, some services, depending on where you're located, that you might be charging a little bit over the hourly cap. And time limits are important for that ACCS transition to work. The length of time for families really depends on whether they're studying, training, looking for a job, or doing any sort of activity that's recognised and approved. So I would like to say, and one of the things that I always look out for, especially in relation to ACCS transition to work, be mindful that a family may only get a set amount of time, and you might need to keep on top of them, whether they want to keep prepaying their fees or pay a gap, even though their fees may be only at that 5%, because sometimes the families will come off it very quickly. So, you know, in their MyGov system, they will see an end date, but normally in your third-party system, you won't see an end date for that. And the last one before we move on to what you actually can provide is one that I'm quite passionate about, that covers ACCS grandparents. And this is available to grandparents that obviously have a primary role in the day-to-day decisions of childcare, welfare and development for their grandchild. Now, it can also include a combination of grandparents where it might actually be a biological grandparent, a step grandparent, an adopted grandparent, or it could be some sort of kinship grandparent, especially in Indigenous communities. So they also need to be getting an income support payment from Centrelink to get the ACCS grandparent rate. If a family is a grandparent and they go through and do the application and they get rejected, it may mean they might still be able to get normal CCS based on their income and activity hours. So just because a grandparent doesn't get ACCS grandparent rate doesn't mean that they will be ineligible for the normal CCS. The bonus for families who do get ACCS grandparent rate is they won't have to meet any activity tests. So this means they can access 100 hours of subsidised childcare per fortnight. They'll also get 100% off their fees charged, where it's equal to or lower than the hourly cap. And they'll have up to 120% of the hourly cap if your service does charge over the hourly cap. No time limit will apply for these grandparents, which is a fantastic thing for you guys to have that extra knowledge for them. They're already doing a great job looking after their grandchildren. This is an extra assistance where they don't have to worry about fees. They just need to know that they may be eligible for it. So they can get it for the entire time that they stay eligible, that they're looking after. It has to be they're looking after at least 65% of the day-to-day care of a child. So normally where grandparents have taken on the primary role. So moving on from there, we have when we can support families. And this is the type of extra support you can have a assistance with. And you just need to check with your third-party software, or you can apply for some of this in the provider entry point in PEP as well. So the two things I wanted to touch base on are ACCS Child at Risk and provider eligible arrangements. So with the ACCS Child at Risk, so this gives families a higher rate of subsidy, more hours for subsidised care, but they need to meet the criteria. So what are they eligible for in childcare subsidy? And also the child needs to be a child needs to be in care who's considered at risk of abuse or neglect, or it could also be an emerging risk. So for this purpose, we're talking about serious risk of abuse and neglect. They may be having physical abuse, emotional abuse, psychological abuse, sexual abuse, domestic or family violence, or neglect. And they may also be assessed by you at the centre that actually they're currently not at risk, but they may be having risk in the future. So definitely have a look at the ACCS guide, and it talks about that. And it's called emerging risk. This is where the centre, in their best practice and best judgment, will look at applying certificates in determination where they actually have an emerging risk. And that's really important to know. We may also have families that are foster carers and foster care arrangements where they're recognised in a decision from the court. They might have an authority to care or collect, and it may be even a foster care agency letter. So with the families applying, approved providers, admins, directors, whoever has access to that, can give families access to ACCS child wellbeing through a certificate and a determination. So there is two different types of ACCS child wellbeing that you can give. So you can complete the certificate and determination, as I said, either in the PEP system, so provider entry point, or in your third-party CCS software if available. Families and child protection agencies are not able to apply. So this is why normally they'll give you the letter and documentation so that you can apply for them. And that documentation will link to the child CRN and it will carry through from centre to centre. So if the family does have a certificate or determination, they've been using a competitor centre and they come to you, that information will come through automatically in your third party, or it should come through in the PEP system. So as I said, we have two types, certificate and determination. Now, certificate is normally the first option that we give in relation to the first step in gaining access for ACCS. We can only give ACCS certificate once every 12 months, and it's normally given up for a period of 6 weeks. With the determinations, this can be applied for in advance. And if you believe that child will continue to have a risk after the 6 weeks and the period has ended. And a determination can be done for a further 13 weeks and then done on subsequent 13 weeks if you believe another determination will be needed. One big key change that came in from July last year was that families in formal care arrangements for foster care and subject to long-term protection orders can get determinations for up to 52 weeks. So that's a really good thing for you at a time where you've got a foster parent and they're obviously having that arrangement with the child. It's going to be an ongoing arrangement. You do have the authority to collect or care. This would mean that the family has access to it from up to 52 weeks, which is fantastic. Your application should always include evidence, if relevant, and that you should show that the child continues to be a risk or at an emerging risk. So this can go anything from a stat deck right through to letters, referrals, court orders, evidence from child safety or protection agency. And I would always strongly recommend, one of my favourite documents is the Guide to Additional Childcare Subsidy, and it's the Child Wellbeing Guide. It is a bit of heavy reading, but certainly I do recommend for anyone that is applying certificates and determinations to be really comfortable with what's available to your families. And then the other one is the provider eligible enrolments, PEAs. So in rare cases, families may be able to get ACCS child wellbeing without having a CRN number. So no one's eligible for PEA, or no one's eligible for CRNs, I should say, despite you making all reasonable attempts at the service. So as a provider, you can actually apply ACCS on behalf of the child under their CRN. And this will allow you to create a normal PEA enrolment or provider eligible enrolment for a family and allow families to continue to receive ACCS during that time until the family can get a CRN for the provider, for the family member, and then you would create a CWA enrolment for them. Now, the most common thing for PEA enrolments are foster care, formal foster care arrangements, because children do get placed with foster carers very, very quickly. So this will allow you to give families ACCS, still collecting your ACCS payments for them, and the family will still have access to your service. So it's normally done at the first point of a foster care placement. PEA enrolments are only valid for a maximum of 13 weeks. So just be very mindful that a foster parent at some point in time will need to get a CRN number and formalise their claim with that foster child. So moving on from ACCS, we've got gap-free absences. So up until the 30th of June, centres can waive the gap fee and receive childcare subsidy if a child's unable to attend care for only one of 3 reasons. And so we've got to be very mindful that there is only 3 reasons where you can waive gaps for families. Obviously, the first one, they are a family in their immediate household must isolate due to COVID-19. So if you can, obviously, where possible, definitely get information like an SMS, like an app, like a letter, whatever it is that they've been forced to go into isolation. The service or a room at the service is closed due to COVID-19, and you have written advice by the state and territory, such as Health Department. So this includes where a school may close and a outside school hours program needs to close as well due to the school being closed. Or in very extreme circumstances, but I know it is happening a lot at the moment and I'm very mindful for that, so I added it into this presentation, where a service or a part of a service is closed because educator to child ratios cannot be safely met. So that's a really important one to know, that you do have the option to waive gap fees. You know, the services are encouraged at all time to explore options to remain open. But if you have a lack of staff and, you know, you have to run 3 rooms rather than 6, this may be something that you guys can look at in terms of doing gap-free absences. The third one is the state and territory has restricted access to a centre in a region. And previously we've had that where we've had hotspots. At the moment in most of the eastern states, I think everyone's experiencing hotspots, but certainly you'll know if the government announces or goes back to the 2021 way of saying when a service has a hotspot. Important things to remember, and I wanted to make sure that we're very clear on what this training session is and isn't. It's not a way to manipulate the government in terms of not following the correct procedures. So please make sure, you know, it is your decision to waive gap fees. It is your business decision. It is your responsibility as a approved provider, and it's up to an individual centre. You don't have to waive gap fees. It is at your own discretion, but also you cannot waive gap fees for families in any other circumstances than the ones that are in the top 3 above. So for example, if a family just chooses to go on holidays or keep their child at home, but they don't have any of the above 3 reasons, they can use their allowable absences, but must pay a gap fee. And I would like to say that is as of today. As Jamie and I spoke about this morning, this can change very rapidly. And, you know, tomorrow it may be that the government announces gap-free waiving and a whole bunch of different things, but be mindful that gap-free waiving is not available to all families. At the moment, it only relates to those 3 types as stated.
All right, before we move on, sorry, Sarah, we've had a lot of new people join us. I just want to let you know if you have any questions or comments, there's a chat available. So please put all of your questions and comments in the chat. So I just wanted to say that before we move on.
And just finally, the increased absent days. So I know there has been some information from DESE that's gone out about this. There's also a COVID page, a childcare page, but just to have it all in one place. For the 2021-22 financial year, all families can access 10 extra allowable absences per child. And normally families, as we know, are able to get 42 days per financial year. So this now brings the total up to 52. These extra absences are to help services and families affected by COVID-19, but they can be used for any reason. So that's good that they can still be used for if the family in the future wants to have a sneaky trip away. Obviously, they will pay the gap on these days. They will be automatically applied through CCS enrolments to families, and they are on top of any days that have already been given to families in different states for last year. So for example, Victoria, ACT, New South Wales had extended lockdowns. You have that information available to you in your family's CCS enrolment. So there are different days that have been available in those different periods of time. So just finally, just if you want to jump onto the socials as well. So, you know, for any of the information that you need, you know, it's a really great idea. We are going to do a number of these come the COVID conversation series, keep up with relevant information. So definitely feel free to subscribe to any Kangarootime Australia social media channels. And I'll pass it back to Jamie.
Thank you, Sarah. Oh my goodness, such great information there. Thank you so much. I just want to ask again, let you know if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. We will, if you have questions that you think of after this, please feel free to message us through Facebook. You can follow us on Kangarootime Australia and also on LinkedIn, as you see here on the screen, Kangarootime Australia on LinkedIn as well. So feel free to message us there, or you can even email me. So it's Jamie, Jamie, at kangarootime.com. And when those questions come through, we will post the answers on our social media for those questions that are relevant and that we get a lot of. And we will also be hosting a Q&A session next week, next Tuesday at 10 o'clock a.m. We'll get Sarah back for another 15 minutes or so, and we will answer any questions there. So before we conclude, I just want to say thank you again for joining us. This is the first of many webinars, so we're going to have a lot of great content for you, a lot of great information in these Calm COVID Conversations webinar series. So keep your eye out on the social media, and we'll also email you. So make sure you're subscribed to our email list. And I want to just leave you and say, have a great weekend. Thank you for everything you do, and be kind and be thoughtful. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Bye.